We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts. Hello, and welcome to Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the people and places that make this city unique. I'm Jeff Hunt, and I'll be your host. This episode is part 2 with Manilatown Heritage Foundation and its executive director, Caroline Julia Cabading. If you missed part 1 with Caroline, please go back and check that out. In part 2, we dive deeply into the history of San Francisco's Manilatown, once a 10-block stretch of Kearny that today runs through the heart of the financial district. Integral to Manilatown's history is the story of the I Hotel. In 1977, hundreds of mostly Filipinos were evicted from the hotel in the middle of the night. Today, the Manilatown Heritage Foundation serves many purposes. Among them, preserving the history of the struggle to keep communities, especially communities of color, intact. Here's Caroline.
The only thing that was missing in Manilatown, which is why, even my own family left, is that it was very similar to how Chinatown is now. This is where you would come if you were a newcomer, but you can't own property here, really. So the SROs would be here, a lot, especially if you were a young man, you would, come here and start here. And then there were a handful of like the immigrant families that actually raised families here. But once you had a point where you could buy property or your first house, you would go somewhere else. And so that was where some of the families ended up in the Fillmore. The Fillmore was basically like all communities where you see quite a few communities of color, especially, is that was where they said we could live. That's really what
I'll say it.
To, yeah. And
it's a redlining idea. It's that mentality for sure.
Yeah. So this is where a Filipino-American family could get a house. And, at that time, these lovely Victorians were not as valued as they are now. So we ended up being in that neighborhood. My family owned 2 Victorians.
Does that hurt your heart a little bit?
It does, because the thing about it is that I do still live in San Francisco, but I can't afford a home in where I grew up.
Right.
Yeah. So that does. And I also have memory, not so much of maybe the popular culture of San Francisco when I was growing up, but I know that particular neighborhood. I remember being able to, I knew everyone on the block. They knew us children. They would snitch to our parents if we were not behaving ourselves or something like that. There was that sense of long-standing families. The older men and women would be looking after you, and there was buy-in of a community.
Totally.
And again, it's we knew the restaurants to go to. I grew up learning how to sing from one of those garage studios that was hidden away.
Amazing.
And that doesn't exist now when I go visit my mom in her Victorian in the Fillmore, because she still lives there.
Oh, great.
There are a bunch of people that the old families are gone. I think it became attractive to them to find out how much their house might have been worth. And so then they could get 2 times the house in Sacramento if they just sort of took the money, which was probably not a great idea because the property value went up even more. But I don't know anybody. And I don't know if they know each other either, because the turnover on some of the people that live there is quite quick. My grandfather's house, it's already had 3 owners in maybe the 25 years that he's been gone, whereas my family has been in that home since the 1940s, so
it was
generations
no
have
one
lived.
left.
Yeah.
And then now there's...
Yeah, so that's very interesting to see, the one home that after maybe 5 years, there will be another owner.
Right.
Whereas it was 2 generations of
unheard
that stayed.
of
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that detour.
Sure.
Let's come back to Manilatown, but specifically the I Hotel. I don't think I mentioned it before we were recording. You mentioned that it was a developer, and it's a name that some people might be familiar with still today, and that they wanted to raise the building and build a parking lot
Yes. But then I'll put a little bit of history here because it would be interesting for people who don't know it. It's like the International Hotel was a low-income residential hotel that became the most dramatic housing rights battleground in San Francisco history and in many ways America. As a center for Filipino and Asian American activism in the 1970s, the building housed nearly 150 Filipino and Chinese seniors, 3 community groups, an art workshop, a radical bookstore, and 3 Asian newspapers. The I Hotel stood on the last remaining block of Manilatown, a once thriving Filipino neighborhood that was gradually displaced by San Francisco's expanding financial district. A little bit about the history of the rise and the fall of the I Hotel. From 1968 to 1977, landlords of the hotel tried to evict the residents and build a parking lot. Resisting eviction for almost a decade, the tenants organized a mass-based, multiracial alliance, which includes students, unions, churches. During the final 3 a.m. Eviction on August 4th, over 3,000 people unsuccessfully defended the I Hotel from hundreds of club-wielding riot police. The building was demolished in 1979 and remained a vacant lot for over 2 decades. Thanks to a concerted effort by local neighborhood groups, the I Hotel was rebuilt in 2005, providing 104 units of low-income senior housing and this International Hotel Manilatown Center to continue the legacy of Manilatown.
I love it.
So it got the facts in there,
Thank you. No, and I love the story. We'll talk about it a lot more, but like I don't want to say it's a fuck you. It's like, take that. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah. And it's a story about the longevity of struggle. And I think that particularly for young people, they have to understand that is that, it's one thing to protest and to make your intention and your anger known. But the fact of the matter is that you actually have to have the stamina to understand and recognize and respect the fact that these kinds of fights for human rights are never over. It's a constant fight. So you better take care of things like your health, like your emotional health, like just understand and live with the fact that it will be your whole life, and that's okay. To serve in that way, because we're fighting the same fight from 1977. So you always have to be on your guard. It's the longevity of struggle. That's what this story's about. And when you do hold on to that longevity, you might get back something. It took, right?
And in that time, do things like educate yourself, organize, do the things that it would take, work toward.
Yeah.
Work with the struggle and toward the struggle.
Yeah. And that's what we try to do here. We try to not just be in our anger and our protest, but to actually build something that would be our ideal of how we would want to be in community.
Is that a nice segue? You said it, but is that a nice segue to talk about the Heritage Foundation?
Yeah, and and that's pretty much what I think was built. I know under my leadership, that is what I want. And at a time with all the kinds of things that are challenging us, from the pandemic to the level of disrespect that we see of people being cruel to each other and being cruel to our neighborhoods and in our spaces and things like that, and stealing and all this kind of stuff. It's not easy. But it's the first reaction to just be angry about it and then maybe even protest about it. But then that's all you're doing, is that you're feeding anger. So that's important. It's important for us to not sit and take it. But for myself personally and for, the small team that we have here, basically what we do is that we hold down on a daily level what the International Hotel stood for, which was, we're going to create family, we're going to create community, we're going to create support. No matter what is on the outside, we can recreate it, and we can make within this space whatever beautiful family we want to make. So our choice is to build, and our choice is to also, I guess the word would be, protect the narrative. In many ways, it's a sexy narrative. It's like people like to tell this story, but the thing about it is that we're intimately involved in this story. We live with the elders that are living here. We know the old families that are connected to the space. We love this, really, the local land too. We eat at the restaurants. We live here, and so if anyone understands the narrative on a very intimate level, it would actually be us who really love this story and protect it. So we are trying to also tell the story. We're trying to do the research to bring our stories out and making sure that they are preserved, through oral history, through documentaries, things like that. Yeah, and this is why this was very important for me too, to tell this story. It's one thing to do talk story, which was like really lovely. It was a part of my upbringing. We still do talk story here, shoot the shit a little bit about and remember who we were and who we are, but it also needs to be actually literally preserved.
For the perpetuity.
Yeah. Or else we forget our stories. As a matter of fact, if you don't remember the stories, it's as if something didn't exist. And
you don't want to be part of self-erasure.
Self-erasure.
There's enough forces trying to erase.
Yeah. So the story has to be told, and it's a great story for San Franciscans too. And and that's something that San Franciscans in general just need to know. They need to know beautiful stories about how great it is, whether you're transplanted or you were born here. It's like, it really doesn't get any better than this, even as we have our challenges. It's like, it's the most, as I've traveled around the world and in different parts of America, I am so lucky that I grew up in such a diverse area where mostly it's progressive and mostly very liberal, and in a really great state that cares about things like nature, health. Very privileged, I think, that I could even have, this kind of expression. I can make the choices, that I could be a musician, all these kinds of things. I really do own to what I think is still a world-class city of San Francisco.
There's still no place quite like it.
No.
And as long as that's true, I will love it.
Yeah. And, when you come from a family who's been here a long time, each generation will tell you it's the best of times and the worst of times. So, so someone will go, well, I remember when it was really good and stuff. But so my great-grandparents remember, my grandfather used to say, well, I remember when this was really a union town. I remember when we had real competing newspapers, So when you complain that it's like, it's not as good as it used to be, well, it never was good as it used to be. And it's always as great as it is.
Yeah.
Right? So,
it's that line from Last Black Man of San Francisco, you can't hate it unless you love it.
Yeah.
That
too.
So let's hear a little bit about how the foundation came to be. Was the city involved? What is the story there?
One of the great things about the International Hotel was that the leaders of the movement to resist eviction came from the tenants themselves.
Okay.
And they did not want benevolent outsiders fighting the fight of these men. The men wanted to fight it. And then it had to be a tenant-run struggle. So if you wanted to be a part of the struggle in the leadership, you had to actually move into the iHotel and really understand that. So some of the young people like Jeanette, who we met, she came in as a young woman and she wanted to be a part of that struggle. So the leadership was called the International Hotel Tenants Association.
Okay.
They were the leadership. When the eviction did happen and they razed the building, that organization morphed into my organization, the Manilatown Heritage Foundation, because, they were not the International Hotel tenants anymore. And the Manilatown Heritage Foundation, really was trying to remember and preserve and honor the legacy of Manilatown and the iHotel. And then when it became possible that the complex of the International Hotel could be rebuilt, then we became at the forefront of helping to make that happen and to really fight for that. And then, of course, when it was built, we became the managers of one component of the complex, which was the International Hotel Manilatown Center. We are a three-pronged complex, most of this block. It was sort of like neighborhood groups, not least of which was the Archdiocese of San Francisco, which wanted St. Mary's Catholic Church. Right, and so it's right over there.
Okay.
And then, of course, the apartments themselves, the International Hotel Senior Residences is the second component. And then, of course, our center, which is the Community Museum, is the third.
That's where we are right now.
Yes. So it is a part of a bigger complex.
Got it.
And we do have what our dream was, which was low-income seniors, living at the iHotel, living at the iHotel again.
It's wonderful. I'm guessing that right after the evictions, there was a bit of a diaspora necessarily, or was there one place that most people went.
There wasn't one place. It's
Yeah.
like we are talking about maybe 150, individuals, and some of them went to the remaining SROs that were around town. Some died of a broken heart, because they were elders, and for you to be thrown out into the street at 3 a.m., it wasn't 1 p.m., it was 3 a.m.
Right.
It was purposely tried to sneak in the eviction at a time when most people they thought would be sleeping or something like that.
Right.
So, so that was intentional. So some died of poor health, some scattered to other parts of America.
Even left the Bay Area,
Left the Bay
California.
Area.
Wow.
One of our heroes I know went to the Washington area because
Okay.
I got to know his family, in later years. But there wasn't one particular place. Later on there would be different places where there would be Filipino enclaves. The South of Market, my family, was from the Fillmore, and where most Filipinos live now in San Francisco, the Excelsior. And then there's also Daly City, where even more Filipinos live in. But no one sort of went as a mass exodus to a particular part.
Right. And so this tenants association that came out of it and then became
Manilatown Heritage
Foundation without a central location, were people just meeting how and when and where they could over the years then reestablish this.
Yes, and actually that's a really good point, because there was no place that they, inhabited. But on August 4th, every year since the eviction and continuing with us now, what ended up being just a hole in the ground for about, over 20 years, because nothing was built here after they evicted everybody.
Go figure.
Yeah. There was a commemoration that recalled
on the site.
Yeah, and a candlelight visual would happen, events would happen. We still remember it. We still remember it not as a celebration, but a commemoration. So that was the one event that kept the community together.
Got it.
And then, of course, when the possibility of rebuilding the complex came up, then we had space. At first we were actually in the South of Market. We were in the Mint Mall. That was where the headquarters were when we started to become more of an organization. And then eventually, when this space was built in, this is where home is.
And I'm going to guess that was starting to happen in the mid to late 90s or so.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, because I came on board as a junior board member to see the building of this. So this was built in 2005. 1994 when it became really incorporated as a nonprofit, actually.
Okay.
Manilatown Heritage Foundation. 2005 was when we rebuilt the space. So that it was in between those, two periods of time when the bulk of the work happened. And I believe that at that time we were in the Mint Mall at the South of the Market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said, did I mishear, you came on in 94?
No,
or when did you come on?
More like 2005-ish.
Oh, around the time of
when we
the
were
building of this.
And that was literally why I came on board. Is that they were trying to build the leadership about the maintenance or the continuation of this space once it was built. So there was a concerted effort to bring in younger people too. And so I was brought in as a junior board of directors member.
Okay.
For the point of like building the space, yeah.
And here we are. I mean, that's no short amount of time.
Yeah.
I had one question. Jeanette?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, Jeanette Lazan.
The woman we met. So how common is it for residents like her to do art and
very
show
good.
art down
Thank you. Because one of the things that we really needed to preserve was that family feeling. And as I like to tell people, it's like, what's the energy that you have here? We're not like a stodgy museum. We're not like, or even a really, a high-end art gallery or anything like that, or even like, a jazz club. Really what we are is an enlarged Filipino living room in which the babies are allowed to be here running around and feeling happy, and the elders are here as well, and everyone in between feeling like this is their space. You come to hear from music, you don't have to be quiet, you can be talking in the corner, you could be like eating, you could, it was like how it was in the old days of the I Hotel. We're trying to preserve that. So if an elder says, I like drawing, I like painting or something. And I would like to have an art exhibit during the week of my birthday, which is what Jeanette is doing. Her birthday's today, as a matter of fact. So we opened on Monday, and she has her art, and that is the most important thing. It isn't about the exhibits and the art that gets funded by the California Arts Council and the San Francisco Arts Commission, which we have too.
Good.
But in some ways, it's this more in the heart that we give expression to our elders and to our babies and to everybody who wants to have an expression of creativity or say. It is very rare to have space in which that can happen. It's very rare to have space in San Francisco, and we're blessed to have it so we can program it. So that's sort of like how that is. And so this is one of the proudest things that, 2 weeks ago, we had a beautiful trained visual artist named Angela Hahn that was here with her lovely work. And we were so proud of that too. But then this is very special too, and then that Jeanette comes in with the drawings that inspire her, and that she gets to show it in and also in an ageist society in which we are so insistent that there is no space or relevance for our elderly. It's important that we show that they are vibrant, that they are doing things, that their minds are still sharp and they're curious, and because that's absolutely not true, that they're not relevant anymore. And so we stand in that space as well.
That's amazing.
That, particularly for our elders, that
That's
our
so
elders
great.
are very welcome in this space.
Does it make more sense to just maybe tell folks about the space, what's permanently here, what's possible here, and invite them to come in?
Yeah, it is most definitely. We are here at 868 Kearny Street. We are on the site of the original I Hotel, and it is a community-based museum first and foremost. We have permanent museum quality artifacts that recall the history. So this is a space where you can learn, particularly about the history of historic Manilatown and the I Hotel. There is even a formal I Hotel historic walking tour that we will take people on.
Awesome.
But we are also aware that we're not an archaic space that has no relevance to modern, a community. So we listen to what the community would like to have in this space, be it our local Chinatown community, our San Francisco community, affordable housing and tenants' rights are part of our community, or the Filipino-American community. And we offer programming in that area. So it has nothing to do with historic Manilatown, but our young people in particular are wanting to connect with their ancestral culture. So one of the things we do here, which has become a primary program, is we actually teach the music and culture and the crafts of ancestral pre-colonial Philippines. So that's just one of the things that's happened. I'm a musician. Most of my staff are musicians, jazz musicians, as a matter of fact. So we have jazz. So the jazz program that happens here. So some of those things, they just happen because artists come through,
Before I forget, because I'm not familiar with some of these musical instruments behind us, can you tell us? We'll get pictures for sure, but can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, what you
Educate
see,
us.
yeah, behind us is actually, and I've been studying this music with culture bears in the Philippines for over 20 years. So I'm actually one of the primary teachers that teaches here, and
I asked the right person.
yeah. So it's kulintang music, and it's the pre-colonial gong tradition of the Philippines. We also teach the gong tradition of the northern Philippines of Kalinga. And me as a composer, I actually bring together, I like to feel that I'm contributing to Filipino-American jazz in the sense that, my birthright is as a jazz musician. That's how I've been trained. And this, I am an American person. But I draw from my ancestral culture the musical motifs, melodic and rhythmic of ancestral Philippines. And I create compositions that fuse both. And because I'm a vocalist and a lyricist, the words also oftentimes reflect the history of Manilatown to be in remembrance. So my talk story is actually through music, including a song about the I Hotel as well. So that's sort of like how, a creative person can be rooted in the space and sort of like find inspiration. And we have visual artists that have come through here and they find that inspiration. Poets, especially poets and writers. So people, if their heart is here, there's an important book by Carlos Bolosan in the Filipino community called America is in the Heart. Manilatown is in the heart. It doesn't it's not necessary that you were born here or that you had family here. If it resonates in your heart, you are a daughter or son of Manilatown as far as we're concerned.
That was Caroline Cabading, Executive Director of the Manilatown Heritage Foundation. Our next episode takes us over to the Mission District to meet folks from 826 Valencia, the nonprofit organization supporting under-resourced students with creative and writing skills and helping teachers inspire their students to write. Episode 13 drops next Tuesday. Special thanks on this episode to sound designer Kayla Anchel. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Michelle Kilfeather does original photography for us. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 5th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show. And drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, weird, and healthy. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.